نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. As human beings, we are very easily affected and influenced by whatever is happening around us. This is a very real part of what makes us human. We stay under good influences. It has an impact on us. It changes the way we think, the way we feel, the way we behave, and what choices we make. When we are exposed to negative influences, then the exact opposite happens. This is a reality that no one denies. However, when you're dealing with the real world, and there are many things that are not necessarily completely in your control, how do you go about living your life, keeping your identity, remaining upright and practicing or pious? How do you do that when there are many things around that may not be supporting you? They may be doing the opposite. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam some instructions, and those instructions are in fact directed to his ummah as well. In Surah Al-Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ. Keep yourself with those who are remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala morning and evening. So this would be those people who are first of all praying. These people are establishing their salat. They're not missing out on salat. And secondly, they're dedicating some time to the remembrance of Allah. Maybe some dhikr, maybe some tilawah, maybe some dua. All of this is included in this. Those that are turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should keep yourself with them. And let those people be enough for you in terms of friends and company. Let them be enough for you. وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ. Don't let your gaze look for anyone else. Even though there are people who will come and impress you. The Quran talks about people whose words are very impressive. وَإِن يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ. When they speak, you feel compelled to listen. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. There are some people that when they speak, their words are very appealing, very attractive. But inside they don't have anything. So yes, people will come, and some people will impress you with their possessions. Some will impress you with their appearance. Others will impress you with their experiences. Others will impress you with their fame. People will impress others with different things. And as human beings, it's very easy and it's normal to be impressed by something that you see in someone. Like people became so impressed when they saw Qarun with all of this wealth. And they used to say, wow, يَا لَيْتَ لَنَا مِثْلَ مَا أُوتِيَ قَارُونَ إِنَّهُ لَذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. If only we had that kind of wealth and those types of luxuries. So this is human nature. We get impressed by what we see, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala redirects us that look, even though there are many things that may be impressive outside, it doesn't mean that that is what you need. It doesn't mean that that is what is good for you or that is what is going to help you. In the case of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who is the least likely to be distracted from all of mankind, the least likely person to be distracted from Allah, to be distracted from his obligations to Allah, the least likely to become unmindful of the commandments of Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him, keep yourself with those people that are connected to Allah. And then there are some people on the other side of the spectrum. These are people who don't have the remembrance of Allah. They don't have the remembrance of Allah in their hearts. And their life is run largely on their desires, what they feel like doing. Their decisions, their choices are based on what they feel like doing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically mentions this type of people. وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. Do not follow, don't become a follower of those people whose hearts are void of the remembrance of Allah. That's the first thing. If someone is not mindful of their duties to Allah, they're not worthy of being your friend. The second thing is, what is their lifestyle about? If their lifestyle is based only on what they feel like doing, then this is another red flag for the believer. Because a believer's lifestyle is based largely on duties and obligations. It's a very structured life, even though they have time to enjoy themselves, they have time to have fun, they have time for all of those. But their life is not based on what I feel like doing, it's rather based on what I need to do, what Allah has created me for. If somebody is not in touch with their purpose of being here, and it's all just about doing what you want to do with your life, that's another alarm. And the third thing is, وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. This is a person who is constantly testing or breaking limits. This is the person who will either do just the bare necessary in order to get by, or they'll push the limits just enough so that they don't get in trouble. Even risk getting in trouble every now and then, as long as the circumstances, as long as the consequences are not severe, they'll keep pushing those limits. This is the person who is getting by with just the bare essentials in class or in work or in behavior, and occasionally breaking the limits or frequently breaking the limits. So it's a person who does not have respect for boundaries and limits. So the Quran is telling Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to steer clear of these people. You stay away from those people. In the other place, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala tells us as believers, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu attaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Have taqwa, become pious. Okay, oh Allah, how do we become pious? So Allah gives us one very easy way of doing that. Kunu ma'as sadiqeen, be with people who are true. Be with people who are real. Be with people who are mindful of Allah inside and outside. They're the real thing. They're not putting up a show. They're not the kind of person who will only behave if they're forced to. They'll only behave well if they're under supervision. The moment the supervision is gone, they become a completely different person. Their dress will only comply under strict supervision. The moment that strict supervision is not there, everything changes. Those are not the sadiqeen. These people need to work on themselves and become more real. They need to become more genuine. Another translation for sadiq is someone who is genuine. So the Quran wants us to stay with these kinds of people. Now what about in our environment outside? Look, we all have to go into the outside environment. One day, everyone's going to be in an institute where they're not surrounded by people who share the same beliefs. You're going to be put in a very diverse environment. Whether it's during your schooling, during your work life, or your social life, we're all exposed to different things, even on a day-to-day basis. So, how do you manage it? The Prophet ﷺ told his companions, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْجُلُوسَ بِالطُّرُقَاتِ. The first thing is, avoid those environments that you don't absolutely have to be in. As a form of protecting yourself. As a form of protecting yourself. Avoid those environments that are not necessary for you and they may have some harmful elements. So in this case, he told the companions, don't sit around on the pathways, the sidewalks, the footpaths, the places where there's a lot of traffic of people. because you're exposed to too many things that are not necessarily under your control. Sahaba came back to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "Oh Prophet of Allah, sometimes we can't avoid it. Sometimes that's the only place we get to sit. That's the only place we get to meet. It's outside in those public spaces." So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Look, if you absolutely have to, if there is a genuine need and you must, then you need to be prepared to fulfill the haqq of being there. فَإِنْ أَبَيْتُمْ أَوْ فَإِذَا أَبَيْتُمْ إِلَّا الْمَجْلِسَ فَأَعْطُوا الطَّرِيقَ حَقَّهُ." Be ready to fulfill the haqq of being there. They said, وَمَا حَقُّ الطَّرِيقِ يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ? What is the haqq of this? What is the right, the due of this upon us? So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam counted 5 things. The first was غَضُّ الْبَصَرِ. If you're going to be out in a public space where all kinds of people will be moving around you, you must be prepared to first guard your gaze. This is part of the haqq of being there, that you're guarding your gaze. You're not looking at everything and anything that's walking by. So look, the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that yes, many times you will go into that kind of environment, which is not a controlled environment, but you must go there on your own terms. You must go there with your own mandate. You must go there with your own attitude. You must go there with your own set of behaviors and present those behaviors there. Display those behaviors there. And if you're not ready to do that, then you can't be there. So the first was to guard your gaze. The second thing was kaful adha. Kaful adha means 2 things. One of 2 things. Either it means that if you see something harmful, you remove it. If you see something that is disturbing the movement of people, something that could potentially cause harm to someone, something someone could trip over, for example, or slip on, remove it. That's one meaning. The other meaning of kaful adha is make sure you're not causing a nuisance to people. Make sure you're not causing a disruption. You're not causing a disturbance to the peace and quiet. So if you're out there, you're not the one that is being annoying for other people. Kaful adha. You make sure you're not doing anything that's annoying people, disturbing people. And the third thing is, when someone says salam, be prepared to reply to salam. Sometimes when we're out in public spaces as youngsters, sometimes we don't even greet each other with salam. Person says hi, the next person says hi, and you move on. No, even out there, this instruction of salam needs to be revived. And the fourth one is, if you see someone that needs advice to do something good, then you must be prepared to give that advice, even in that public space. Al-amru bil-ma'ruf. And if you see someone doing something wrong, you must be prepared to stop them from doing that wrong. An-nahy anil munkar. These are the 5 haqqs, the 5 rights that open public space has upon us. So here we are, we're going out to do our things, going out to the shopping center, but you're going out on your own terms as a believer. That identity, it's not just calling yourself a believer, but it's actually playing that role, doing those specific things that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has asked us to do. When a person goes out doing all of these things, they're not very likely to be affected negatively by the environment. They're so busy doing their own things there. They're so busy fulfilling those commandments of Allah. They're so busy fulfilling those duties that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has given them, they don't have time. Same thing happens when you go into a social circle. You go into a gathering of friends. Okay, fine. The first thing that the Quran tells us is you should be selective about who you make your friends and who you allow yourself to be with. We've already covered that. Now the next thing is you're going into this gathering. You're going to this event. You're going to this function, to this party. Alright? Are you ready? Are you prepared to be there and play the role of a believer? Or are you just going to go and melt into that environment and become one of that environment? These are things that we have to think about. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, لا تصاحب إلا مؤمنا. Don't keep the company of anyone but a true believer. وَلَا يَأْكُلْ طَعَامَكَ إِلَّا تَقِيٌّ. Only pious people should be taking from your food, eating from your food. In other words, you should have pious people coming over to your house. Good people. People that when you stay with them, you feel inclined to practice deen more. The dua that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make for someone who invited him to his house, he would say that may fasting people break their fast. Aftara indakumus sa'imun. May people come and break their fast at your place, so you get the reward of the fasting of all of those people. Wa akala ta'amakumul abrar. May pious people come and eat your food. In other words, may you always be in the company of good, pious people. So when we talk about peer pressure, the way we deal with peer pressure will affect the way we deal with social pressures, the pressures of society. If we cannot cope with or maintain our identity amongst our peers, it's going to get even harder and more difficult to maintain our identity in the broader environment of society and of culture that we live in. So these are some very clear guidelines that we need to adhere to, whether we're at school or we're out of school. A person who can do this here and be selective. Not everyone has to be your friend, nor do you have to be everyone's friend. Be selective and use iman, use behavior as your benchmark for who you choose to be your friend. And inshallah, if you get in the habit of doing this, you will be able to safeguard your own practices and improve as a person throughout your life. But if you're not selective, then remember, whoever you are staying with is having a direct impact. So who is the one who is going beyond limits? Who is the one who is staying within limits and respecting limits? Who is the one who is fulfilling their duties to Allah, and who is neglectful of their duties to Allah and maybe making you forget as well? These are things to think about. If you think about these things proactively, inshallah, you'll never come under that negative peer pressure that will make you feel forced to misbehave or act silly or be disobedient or whatever else it is that peer pressure makes people do. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us in the company of righteous people, pious people in dunya, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise us with them in akhirah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.
Allahu